I'm calling to order this hearing or roundtable. This is a public roundtable of the Committee of the Whole. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council and Chair of the Committee. Today is Tuesday, I take that back, Monday, December 7th. The year is 2020. The time is 10:36 in the morning, and we are conducting this hearing live via Zoom video conference broadcast platform, as well as Council Channel 13. This hearing is also available on the DC Council website, which is www.dccouncil.us, and I believe this hearing is also available on Facebook. The subject of this morning's roundtable is consideration of two resolutions that were recently introduced in the Council. The first is PR 23-1007, entitled the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority Board of Directors Thorne Pozen Confirmation Resolution of 2020, which was introduced at the request of the mayor a month ago. That's November 2nd, 2020. The stated purpose of PR 23-1007 is to confirm the reappointment of Thorne Pozen as a board member of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority Board of Directors for a term to end on January 5th, 2027. So that would be a 6-year term. Mr. Pozen's current term ends on January 5th, 2021. Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, otherwise known as MWAA, is an independent body created through an interstate compact between the Commonwealth of Virginia, the state of Maryland, and the District of Columbia. The compact promotes, develops, and operates Washington Dulles International Airport and Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. The MWAA Board of Directors governs the activities of MWAA and is composed of members appointed by the governors of Virginia and Maryland, the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the President of the United States. If I remember correctly, appointments to the MWAA Board of Directors are limited to the term for which they're appointed, meaning that they don't hold over. And so if the term expires January 5th, it's important that we act now, assuming that there are no serious concerns or objections that are raised, that we act now to reappoint Mr. Pozen so that there is not a gap in service representing the district, that the district is fully represented on the MWAA Board of Directors. The second resolution, which is the subject of today's hearing, is PR 23-1034, the Board of Zoning Adjustment Fred Hill Confirmation Resolution of 2020. This resolution was introduced at the request of the mayor roughly 2 weeks ago, that is November 18th. The stated purpose of PR 23-1034 is to confirm the reappointment of Mr. Fred Hill to the Board of Zoning Adjustment for a term to end on September 23, 2023. That's, I believe, a 3-year term. Mr. Hill's term ended on September 30th, 2020, and he is currently serving in a holdover capacity. The Board of Zoning Adjustment is an independent quasi-judicial body with the ability to grant relief from the strict application of the district zoning regulations in the form of variances. It also has the ability to grant special exceptions where authorized by the zoning regulations and to hear appeals from actions taken by the zoning administrator at the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. The record in this matter will close in a week. That is, the record will close at 5 p.m. on December 14th, 2020. So anybody who is watching or is aware of this hearing and wishes to submit comments has until 5 p.m. December 14th. And anybody who's participating today who wishes to supplement their comments has the same deadline, the close of business on December 14th. That's so that the council can take this up at its last legislative meeting of this council period, which will be held on December 15th. We have 3 witnesses. The first witness is Warner Session, and then we have the 2 nominees. I think I would like Warner to speak first, assuming he's here. I should say Mr. Session. And then I'll ask the 2 nominees to speak. So, Mr. Session.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and council staff. I am Warner Session, principal of the Session Law Firm, and current board member of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, MWAA. I'm pleased to appear this morning in support of my friend and colleague, Mr. Thorne Pozen, for his reappointment to the MWAA board. I've served on the MWAA board, as you know, since 2011, which now makes me the longest serving MWAA board member. And I can emphatically state with great pride that it has been a privilege and honor to serve alongside Thorne. Thorne is extremely thoughtful, intellectually curious, and very principled, all attributes that are important to being an effective board member and attributes necessary for consequential governance. He has given significant time and attention to the task at hand, including co-chairing the Risk Management Committee in 2018 and currently serving as co-chair of the Human Resources Committee. In the latter capacity, Thorne has been very conscientious, along with Jocelyn Williams, another District of Columbia appointee, in overseeing the fair and equitable treatment of those individuals who work for the airlines as contract employees, as well as those who work in our concessions. He has participated in numerous listening sessions with union workers and leadership to understand the issues and to inform his opinion. Thorne was a key member, for example, of the MWAA Ad Hoc Labor Committee, which I appointed in 2019 to address our airport workers' wage policy, and which resulted in the board's adoption of a resolution to increase the wages of low-wage workers to $15 an hour by 2023. His insight and contribution to that process were invaluable. In closing, I want to say that Thorne's reappointment comes at a critical time in the life of our two airports. Like other enterprises and governments in this country and around the world, we are challenged by the extraordinary circumstances of the pandemic, which has impacted all aspects of our operations. As we collectively work to address these challenges, it's important that all of the MWAA board members have an oar in the water. I'm confident, given his performance to date, Thorne will be a valuable contributing member. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Session. Remind me, you are currently the chair of the board, or you're the past chair?
I'm the immediate past chair. We rotate every 2 years. I served as chair for 18 and 19.
2 years.
2 years, yes.
Okay. And in your estimation, is the board working well together? Are the board members working well together?
Extremely well. In fact, I often say since 2011, there's been different iterations of the board, and this composition of the board has worked as well as any. In fact, I would say it's been the best composition in my view from all aspects in terms of esprit de corps and collegiality and working through challenging issues.
And what are the most challenging issues right now that the board is facing?
Well, it's obviously the elephant in the room is the pandemic and the fact that air travel is down as much as 85-90%. Trying to make sure that operations continue and we pay our bondholders and that salaries get paid. Dealing with concessions that have had to close because there's no air travel. Almost everything that you would imagine a municipal government would have to face in the face of this health crisis. So we're like everyone else, trying to make ends meet, trying to make sure we're sensitive to our employees, and first and foremost to make sure that everyone stays safe.
Is there a risk that the authority would not meet its financial obligations?
No, we've been very meticulous. Our finance office and our CEO and keeps us apprised of everything that we're being challenged by. We did get CARES money that helped plug some of the gaps. So we're maintaining, like everyone else, hoping that it will turn the corner sometime next year, and hopefully by the end of 21 or going into 22, that air traffic starts to return as a result of widespread vaccinations.
Um, What progress is the authority making with regard to noise? And you know what I mean by noise, aircraft noise.
Yeah. Well, it's do you want to say pre or post pandemic? It's kind of, we're kind of in two eras now, in a different era now. I would say, to address your question, pre-pandemic, we were continued to meet as there's a working group, a noise working group, that is comprised of individuals from Maryland, DC, and Virginia, and with participation from the airline. So I would say that that working group continues to, again, pre-pandemic, to address what what issues we can to try to mitigate the noise. It's not going to ever go away completely. That's just the nature of air travel, but they've been working judiciously to try to make the best of a challenging situation.
Well, are we going to get FAA to be more responsive to us? And us is not just the district, but the region. But of course, we care first about the district.
I would, I'm eternally optimistic that they will. Obviously, we're going to be, we'll have a new administration fairly soon. And I would say, Mr. Chairman, that should be one of the, top issues that we engage with the new administration going into next year. But again, we have to look at everything, post-pandemic.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that means post-pandemic. With the recovery, there'll be more airline flights, more noise. I get that we want to see the industry rebound. We want our airports to thrive, but we still have to deal with the issue.
Yeah, we do. I didn't mean to say that we ignore it and it goes away. I'm just talking in terms of priorities and sequencing. So yeah, I would imagine that the working group will restart again in earnest, and pick up where they left off.
And I guess this will be my final question. In your opinion, management is doing well at the agency?
Very well. I'd have to give management 5 stars, particularly in this extraordinary environment we find ourselves in. We have a top tier team led by Jack Potter, and incredible finance staff, which keeping things moving, in operations staff. So yes, the answer is unequivocally yes.
And related to that, the kind of issues that existed at the time you were first appointed to the board that the U.S. Department of Transportation was very concerned about, no risk of any of those have all been...
All those things have been resolved, and I would say that's yesterday's news. And in fact, going into 2020, we were ecstatic about the trajectory we're on in terms of, employments. Our concession revenue was exceeding our aeronautical revenue, which is always a good thing, meaning that, goods and services and concessions and parking were exceeding 50%. We were moving, fast and furious, and then things came to, a screeching halt. So all the infrastructure and talent and assets that were in place will still be in place when we start to come out of this. And so I'm very optimistic for a good future for the authority. The good news, there is a silver lining, is because there's been less air traffic, we'll be able to complete our project journey, which is the new concourse, North Terminal, and Secure National Hall by late spring, early summer of next year. So that's moved along very well. And again, that will certainly accommodate the return of passengers to National Airport.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. I don't have any other questions for you. These hearings on nominations are an opportunity to do a little bit of oversight of how the authority is doing. So I appreciate your being here.
Yes.
You, of course, are speaking as an individual, not on behalf of the board.
That's correct.
All right. Let me turn to the nominees. Again, thank you. You don't have to go anywhere, but I'm going to hear now from Mr. Pozen.
Good morning, Chairman Mendelson. First, thank you, Mr. Sessions, for the kind words. It has been a truly an honor and a great privilege to work with you, Warner, and your mentoring has been tremendous. As an incredible learning curve, Mr. Chairman, on this board. I thought I was fairly well prepared to start my work with the board, and the learning curve was a little like drinking out of a fire hose there with getting all of the facts and board process procedures and how everything worked. But thanks to Warner and the management team and my fellow board members, I feel like I've been able to get up to speed and have been, as I say, a great honor working on the committee.
Before you go any further, is it correct that it's a 6-year term?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, Chairman Mendelson, members of the committee as a whole, and the committee staff, good morning. As you said, and I'm Thorn Pozen. I'm a nominee for renomination to the position of member of board of directors of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, which we refer to as MWAA. I'm a partner in the Washington, D.C. law firm of Goldblatt, Martin, Pozen, LLP. But please know that my comments, like Mr. Sessions earlier, are my own and not those of my law firm or our clients. I do want to first thank Mayor Bowser for this expression of confidence in renominating me to the board. I also want to speak briefly this morning about my experience, both working with and for the District of Columbia in the community here through my law practice, as well as during my first term as MWAA board member. All of these experiences, I believe, qualify me for reappointment to the position to which I've been nominated. And I also want to talk a bit about my work on the board. And finally, I want to be sure to answer any questions the committee may have for me. And I appreciate Mr. Sessions taking the lead on answering a number of the questions. Happy to answer further questions that you may have. First, as to my experience, I was born and raised here in Washington, D.C. In my law practice, I focus on advising government and private sector clients on local government administrative law and local and federal government ethics issues. I have served as special counsel in the district government, including serving as the district's ethics counselor and chief FOIA officer. Additionally, I have served as chief of staff to a former DC council member and a staffer for the former DC Financial Control Board. In all, I have been working for and with the district government for over 30 years of my professional career. I also serve on the boards of several legal, community, and charitable organizations in the district, including the DC Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, the Jewish Community Relations Council for Greater Washington, the Council for Court Excellence, and I serve on the advisory board of SEDC DC. I'm a graduate of Connecticut College in New London, Connecticut, from which I graduated with honors and distinction in my major, and the American University's Washington College of Law here, from which I graduated magna cum laude. I live in Ward 2 with my wife and 2 children. I believe that my local government expertise, legal training and practice, knowledge of the District of Columbia, and relationships from those experiences have and will continue to serve me in very good stead on the MWAA board. I think also that my broad board, current and former board, and ethics experiences has and will continue to help me with ensuring the good governance at the authority and continuing MWA's board's progress in dealing with some of the ethics challenges to which you referenced that it has faced in the past. Though through my board, MWA board service, I have focused on both the 5 priorities I outlined when I was first before you for confirmation, and several new initiatives I've taken on since then. The priorities I outlined when coming to the board were ensuring that the interests of the District of Columbia are fully represented, ensuring authority procurement and hiring are fully open and transparent and appropriately available to district businesses and district residents, continuing the progress the authority has made, the authority and the board have made on ethics reform, ensuring appropriate management and oversight, and working towards sustainable and steady growth in passenger load, cargo handling, and business activities at both National and Dulles airports so that the authority can continue to be an economic driver for the District of Columbia. Additionally, since joining the board, I have also focused on securing an appropriate management leadership succession plan, providing real and sustainable economic opportunity to all those who work on both airport campuses. I feel that I have made real progress on each of those goals, including in particular taking a leadership role in the board's workers' wage initiatives, bringing living wage guarantees to previously largely neglected airport workers, working on building bridges between the district's DOES and MWA, and chairing the board's ethics committee. I must say, though, that my most important work and daunting work has been working with my fellow board members and MWA management to confront the tremendous challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. This has been the single greatest threat to the aviation, travel, and hospitality industries probably in history. We all hope that a safe and effective vaccine will allow domestic and international travel to rebound this next year. But even with that, continuing to ensure MWA employee and passenger safety and charting a path back to economic stability and growth will be tough. I do, though, look forward to using the experience and institutional knowledge I have learned and gathered, as well as harness the relationships with management and with my fellow board members to help me face these challenges and finish the work I've begun. In conclusion, I am, as I say, honored to be renominated to this important position. If confirmed, I pledge to continue to put in the time and work necessary to be successful and to properly represent the district on the board. Thank you for the opportunity to present these comments to you today. Thank you, Mr. Session, for your words and comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Pozen. Why don't I hear from Mr. Hill, and then I'll ask questions of both of you. Fred.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning, Chairman Mendelson, members of the council. My name is Fred Hill, and I'm very pleased to be here today as a nominee of the Board of Zoning Adjustment, BZA. I'd like to personally thank Mayor Bowser for her continued faith in me and in renominating me to the BZA. I'm honored to be considered to serve on a board that is so vital to the character and development of our city. I've served on the BZA since 2015, and for the past 4 years, I've served as chair. I've had the privilege of calling the Washington, D.C. area my home for the past 45 years and witnessed the dramatic growth that has taken place in our city. I lived in Cathedral Heights, Shaw, and now Penn Quarter. I earned my degree in economics from the University of Arizona, studied Mandarin at the University of Beijing, and ran a startup communications company in Beijing, China. I founded a healthcare communications firm in 1998, and through running my own consulting company over the past 25 years, I've honed my skills in management, planning, and implementation. I'm proud to say my company is in DC, located within the downtown BID, And among my activities within the district, I've served on the board of directors of the DC chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization, served on my condo board in ANC 2C, served on the board of leadership Greater Washington, and am a member of the Federal City Council. I was confirmed by this council to serve on the BZA in 2015 and was confirmed again in 2017. Since that time, I've participated in over 1,000 cases for special exceptions, variances, and appeals. As the council knows, we take public testimony from the community, ANCs, and different DC departments, including the Office of Planning and the Department of Transportation, and then use that testimony during our deliberations. Over the past 5 years on the BZA, I've gained meaningful experience working with applicants, the Office of Planning, the Department of Transportation, citizens, presenting in support and opposition, and various ANCs. I'm keenly aware of how important the BZA is to the city and how important each case is to the applicant's community and to maintaining the integrity of the zoning regulations. Applicants are entitled to fair and impartial arbiters who will both hear them out and hold them to the standards they must meet in order to grant or deny the relief requested. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the professional and technical support provided to the board from the Office of Zoning, Sarah Barden, Clifford Moy, Tracy Rose, Karen Melhart, Paul Young, and Rob Reed, from the Office of the Attorney General, Max Tondro, Mary Nagelhout, Alex Kane, Dan Bassett, and Jake Rice. Without their support, the board would not be able to fulfill its responsibilities to the city. I've enjoyed my time on the BZA and believe I've done a good job at bringing well-balanced, informed, salient points to the discussions that my fellow board members, as we deliberate each case, and if reappointed, will continue to do this good work. Chairman Mendelson and council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I welcome any questions you may have for me. Thank you.
Thank you each of you for your testimony. Thank you as well for your service. As I might have said earlier, I view these confirmation hearings as an opportunity to just sort of refresh where we are with these different, in your case, the authority and the Board of Zoning Adjustment. Questions that I ask at every hearing, although I sent you pre-hearing questions and I want to thank you for getting your answers. We scheduled this hearing rather quickly because we wanted to get these nominations through before the end of the calendar year, the end of council period 23. And with regard to the authority, as I noted earlier, that's particularly important. Mr. Hill is able to hold over for 6 months, but Mr. Pozen, you cannot hold over. So if we want full representation, we have to get you through the council. But I also think it's important to have these hearings or a roundtable, which means slightly shorter notice, because it's an opportunity to hear from the public. So if there were a lot of witnesses who were coming in and saying you guys did horrible work, then maybe I would have some pause. But I'm not seeing or hearing that, and that's encouraging. In the pre-hearing questions, I asked some questions, which I'm going to ask again now. One of them is, are you current in your taxes and financial obligations to the district government and the federal government? Mr. Pozen?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
And do you, since both of you are being nominated for reappointment, you have experience. Do you see that there might be opportunities, I shouldn't say opportunities, there might be occasions when you have to recuse yourself because of possible conflict of interest? Mr. Pozen?
It's happened, I think, twice in the 6 years that I've served so far, where there's been a client or some other issue that overlapped with the service on the board. So it's possible, but very unlikely and rare.
And the process is one where what is the process when you see a potential conflict of interest?
It's quite robust. There is within the general counsels, they have a separate general counsel's office at the board. And before each meeting, the counsel's office goes through every issue that's even likely to come up at the board meeting. And to the extent that there's a possible conflict, we go over it with the ethics officer. And I've been always erring on the side of caution and fully publicly recusing myself to the extent there's ever been an issue in writing and formally with the Secretary's office of the board.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
No, I don't see any conflicts.
Have there, in the time that you've been on the board, been occasions when you've had to recuse yourself?
I think I recused myself once or twice. I think there was once where I was serving on the board or had a relationship with one of the applicants.
What about time to serve? This maybe is asking the obvious, but I'll ask it anyway. So, Ms. Pozen, you know how long it takes to, how much time is required for you to serve on the authority. Do you have that time?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
I do have that time. I'm making that time.
Okay. And I think you are the chair, am I correct, Mr. Hill?
Yeah, I am.
So you have to spend a little extra time, and you've been the chair for a couple of years, a few years.
It's been 4 years now.
Yeah. And so you do have that time to serve.
Yes.
Let me see. Mr. Pozen, a couple of questions I want to ask you unique to the authority. One of them is noise. So I should have had you out of the room so you didn't hear Mr. Secretary.
No, I got it. You took the tip of the spear for the answers, and I appreciate his discussion and answer on this. It's a perennial problem, as you know, for the district, and as you pointed out, it is largely an FAA issue in that they control the flight paths and staging, into the airport. Mostly, we're talking about National Airport here, although it has reared its head a little bit in Dulles, not so much related to the District of Columbia. But for National Airport, it has been an issue. I think to some degree, what Mr. Session was mentioning is that during this pandemic period, the flights at National have been curtailed significantly, and therefore the noise has been curtailed to some degree as well. I must say that I've had the pleasure of moving within the district recently, and I now live in Georgetown, a little bit closer to the flight path. So I'm very aware of the noise issues as they exist. As you know, the authority has devoted a considerable time and resources into putting together working groups, trying to bring members of the community, including DC representatives, as well as representatives from Maryland, Virginia, together with both the airlines on the one side and FAA on the other, to try to maximize communication and work through some of the issues. I think there's been some progress with the FAA. I think they have generally been slightly increasingly willing to listen and to make some modifications. They have made some slight modifications, which I think quite frankly have inured to DC's benefit slightly in terms of flight paths on and over the Potomac, to the extent that a higher level of noise complaints that we've been receiving through portals and information that the MWAA has gathered has pointed to greater complaints in a little bit farther out on the Potomac, Glen Echo area, and a little bit farther towards the north and the west to some degree, and some additional complaints on the Virginia side as well. So that of course is the rub there. Anytime we push or the FAA makes any changes to some flight patterns, it tends to make it worse somewhere else. The main focus, as you know, is a change in the FAA's technology, which has allowed for flights to take a more of a straight line path towards landing, saving fuel and increasing some safety, so they feel it's a very positive step. But what that has done is mean that planes kind of tail each other very relatively closely, one right after the other over the same flight path where they had been a little bit dispersed before, which has increased the noise. So we continue, I think, to work towards that, recognize it's a significant issue, both for the district as well as for our sister jurisdictions. And I know there's tremendous commitment on the both on the board and from the staff to do the best that we all can to bring FAA to the table. And as Warner said, look forward to working with the new administration to make sure that small bit of progress can continue.
Mr. Pozen, do you agree with Mr. Sessions' characterization that the board is working well together? The board members are working well?
Extremely. I would second and maybe third his discussion. I know even in the time that I've been there, I know in the past it was great acrimony within jurisdictions and between jurisdictions, and it was really very difficult before, well before I came on the board. Even when I was first on the board, things were much better, but still, I think there hasn't been the level of cooperation and collegiality that I've seen in the last year or so, maybe 2 years, probably the 3 years maybe of my term, that I think that's made some tremendous strides, and it's really served us in tremendous stead, both in terms of the worker wage program, to be able to get that change of policy through, and be able to deal with some of the continuing challenges with COVID-19. It's really borne fruit, but the short answer is yes, very much so.
Mr. Hill, you've been on the board for a while. How would you say that the board members are working together?
I think they work very well together. I think we have, enjoyed each other's intellectual curiosity, what they're bringing to the table, and how they are approaching the regulations. And I think that it's very collegial, and I don't think we've had any problems with any of the members while I've been there. Since now it's been, I guess, 5 years. This will be 5 years. Before I do move on, I know Mr. Pozen, and I want to say hello. Nice to see you. And then Chairman Mendelson, also nice to see you. This is a weird Zoom world, but this is actually the closest thing that I get to seeing people sometimes. So nice to see you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So the board, you would say the Board of Zoning Adjustment, the members are working well together.
Yes.
And is there another vacancy on the board?
Yes, there's one.
Okay, I think we may have gotten a nomination, but that would be a new member. So I'm going to probably move a little bit slower on that, meaning in the new year, certainly not before next week, since we haven't had a hearing on it. Let me see.
May I interrupt you, Chairman?
Yes.
There is, however, one of my board members is up for another position. So there's the potential that I will have 2 open spots if that were to happen.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that would be Lorna John, who's been nominated for the Public Service Commission. And then the other position, who had it?
Leslie White.
And she has stepped down?
She didn't renew.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. I'm not sure why I'm thanking you, but thank you for that. It means we need to look at this. I'm going to go back to Mr. Pozen. The Project Gateway, is that still on track? And what can you tell me about it?
Project Journey, is that what you're referring to? I'm not
Yeah,
familiar.
probably Project Journey. I'm looking at my notes here. It says Gateway, but I think we mean Journey.
Okay, the Project Journey would be the North Concourse at National Airport, along with the secure National Hall. Was it at National Airport that?
Yes.
The short answer there is yes. There's been tremendous progress on those 2 components. As you may have in your regional travels, I may have been aware of the infamous Gate 35X, which was one gate that took people by bus to many, what they call them, hard stands outside to some of the regional jets. It was not the most wonderful experience. I've actually went through 35X a number of times. Wasn't particularly bad, but when the weather isn't good, and it can be less than a wonderful experience going through that. The North Concourse will alleviate that, will eliminate that experience, and will allow travelers to go directly to jetways that will take them directly to their regional jets. Same as if it were a large plane, be able to walk directly onto the plane in a covered fashion. That is very much on track, and in fact, I'm not going to say it's early, but it certainly will be on track, and was ironically aided in some way, I think, as Mr. Session mentioned, due to the less traffic going through the airport during the pandemic. The second phase, the second piece of that project is to move the security back from its current location at the end of the three piers, main piers in the main terminal at National Airport. Currently, if you're going from one pier to another pier, which wasn't really contemplated when the airport was first built as a point-to-point airport, it's now, thanks to mostly American Airlines, but others as well, is much more of a hub airport, and there's much more transfer traffic. So in order to facilitate that transfer traffic and not have to have people go out of security, down National Hall, and back through security to get into another one of the finger piers, security will be moved back, and all of National Hall will be within the secure perimeter. In order to do that, there's a fair amount of construction basically over the roadway, pickup roadway. So that has had some disruption, but again, because of the less traffic through the airport, that disruption has been minimized, and construction has been able to be facilitated. So that will be done soon, and a big improvement on customer experience through the airport all the way.
Thank you. Mr. Hill, does the Board of Zoning Adjustment currently have a backlog of cases?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
When you mean a backlog, you mean that we have a lot of cases that are going to be before us. There's a lot of cases on the agenda over the next couple months, and they seem to be continuing to be pretty. The hearings seem to be pretty full, if that's what you mean by backlog.
No, I mean getting the orders out.
I think they're still getting out the same amount of time that they were. I mean, we're having, again, summary orders are moving faster than full orders, but that's always been the way that the office has, had to go through.
What about Mr. Hill? Your meetings are virtual these days, correct?
Yes.
And how is that working?
I think it's probably been a lot like your hearings. It's been interesting in that I think it's helpful for sometimes the public that, they don't have to come down to the board and sit there as long as they would. I think that it has also, though, I mean, there's been good and bad. I mean, it's convenient in some ways. It's not necessarily, I think, as effective in others. And so I think it's very similar to, again, the experiences that probably, hearings such as this has had taking testimony.
Well, I was kind of wondering because sometimes some of your cases, not very many, but some of them can attract quite a number of witnesses. And the virtual platform has, you guys have worked to it so that it's working well, in your opinion?
Yeah, we've been actually, I know that we've been complimented, I think, on the way that we have kind of run the hearings since going to this platform. I don't want to stay this way forever, but we've done well given what we have to do.
Mr. Pozen, how are the virtual meetings working for the authority? Now, you don't have witnesses at your meetings, I don't think.
Correct.
But how are they working?
I would echo Mr. Hill's comments. I mean, they've done well. There's been some positives, I think, which similar to what Fred was saying, I think allows people who wouldn't necessarily have wanted to go out to where the meetings were being held, either at the MWAA offices, or we occasionally will have them at Dulles or airport itself. So for people who don't want to travel, there's a small advantage. I think going back to your question about collegiality, it's much better to be in personal, close proximity. So I look forward to being back in person with my fellow board members and with the public and those who staff members and so forth. But for the interim, the platform has worked well, the logistics have worked well, and we've certainly gone through it with reasonable ease.
Mr. Pozen, where are we with the Silver Line? What's the status of that?
It's going to be on track. I don't have the date of projected completion. As you know, it's kind of a two-prong approach. And on the one hand, it will be there'll be a date when it's turned over to WMATA for them to do their testing and their work with it, and then that takes a period of time. And then after that period of time is done, it will be available for public use. So there's a disconnect between when MWA's work is largely complete and before it's actually open to the public. The pandemic has obviously thrown some curveballs into the ability of WMATA to accept and deal with. They got their own thing going with their challenges. But as far as construction and work, there's been some hiccups along the way, but we're, I think, largely on track, and we'll have that done relatively soon.
Well, am I incorrect in the impression that the Silver Line is behind the original schedule?
Yes, there have been some slowdowns, and I don't have all of the dates in front of me, but yes, there have been some setbacks, so it is slightly behind. But the most recent target dates and we're on track for the most recent target dates.
What about Metro's own funding concerns? Metro is talking about cutting back its service hours because of its budget, because there are no passengers. And are you concerned that those budget problems might affect the Silver Line?
They may. That's not something that we've had the opportunity to, at least that I've not had the opportunity to speak to the WMATA team on. So I don't want to speculate beyond what I know, but certainly it's an expensive proposition for them to take on this responsibility for the extension in terms of the manpower involved, the crews, and the actual running of the rail service. It is an additional expense, and I can only imagine that the challenges that they face, this will certainly be part of the challenges that they face from their budget. Obviously, the hope is that the federal government will help with that, both with Metro as well as with the other public transit authorities around the country. This isn't just something that they're facing, but it's quite critical and, as you know, quite dire. So I'm sure that will be something that they'll be dealing with. As far as our work is concerned, our job is to get it done as safely and completely and as soon as possible. And I know that work is continuing.
Mr. Hill, has the BZA seen more applications to allow projects to provide additional housing?
Probably over the last couple years.
It suggests to me maybe yes, but not significant.
I guess I'm kind of taking the question as to whether I think policy is driving what we're seeing, and I think that it is possible. I know that, at least from what the zoning commission has been trying to do with the IZ plus uh, uh, work, that has, I think, pushed a little bit more affordable housing units our way. And I think that that's also probably led to more, larger projects, perhaps, in terms of providing housing, if that answers your question.
IZ Plus is envisioned to require BZA approval?
No, I think that, and this is when I say BZA, like IZ Plus will get IZ units that I believe are coming through because of the IZ Plus, because it's allowed.
Yes.
And so that's what I mean by they have to, they'll come before us because they'll need to get the IZ unit approved, right? And so, or and now I have to look at a particular case to try to explain what I'm trying to say, but
Those would be special exceptions?
yes.
Okay, so the IZ or IZ Plus process will require special exception approval.
I can't, I can't speak exactly to everything. I don't know if every IZ plus unit,
Sure.
when it's at the BZA level, yes, it comes to us. When it's again at the zoning commission level, that's the whole zoning commission level.
Sure.
I mean, our projects are much smaller, obviously.
Is there, and you're thinking about zoning, is there something that the BZA could be doing to encourage more housing?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we don't drive any kind of policy or regulations. I mean, we see the cases that the applicants bring before us. So we're
Yeah.
just there to judge the applications that are before us.
And that makes sense. Are there areas of training that you think that you or your fellow board members would benefit from?
I mean, I know that we have the trainings that get scheduled, and as we do, the staff, the OZ staff and the OAG staff, they'll ask the board what we think we need some training in. And so, and I know that, as I've come before you now several times, I mean, we do get training on the standards, we get training on, variances and how we're supposed to look at everything. There's nothing really in particular that comes to mind right now, but we the board do get the opportunity to ask for things to be put on the agenda, and then we can get OAG, the Office of Zoning, DDOT, whoever we need to come before us to provide that training.
So, Mr. Hill, you've been on the board for a number of years, served as chair for a number of years. Where do you think the board can get better? This is a question that's meant to get at some reflection and just, I'll say reflection and vision in terms of, I'm assuming you wouldn't say that the board is perfect. Where do you think the board could get better?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd have to, you're kind of putting me on the spot here in terms of thinking about how I think the board could get better. I mean, I know that we or I'm thinking about, how we get our reports and how we process information, and kind of, my being there for a while now, I've had an opportunity to kind of bring on new board members. So I get a chance to kind of like, share with them my experience and kind of not necessarily train them, but kind of provide kind of outlines as to how you bring on a board member. I suppose that might be something that, how you bring on new board members, what there is. I mean, there is the training that we get from the Office of Zoning, and perhaps, and I hadn't thought about this until right now, I guess I can talk with the Office of Zoning and see if I have any ideas as to how that training might be more helpful when people are brought on board. However, other than that, there's really, I mean, I think that, you know, the BZA is, you know, it is very much a working board. And, you know, we meet week in, week out, and we hear, you know, anywhere from, gosh, you know, 5 to 15 cases a week. And so I do believe that the system, the way it is set up, is a good system. I think it works. And so I'd have to think about that a little bit more. Maybe it's, again, just onboarding people would be something that maybe I'd think about.
So Mr. Pozen's had an advantage of thinking about this while you've been answering the question, Mr. Hale. So, Mr. Pozen, you've been on the authority for half a dozen years, and assuming that the authority is not perfect, where do you think it can get better?
Well, thank you, Fred, for giving me a couple of minutes to think through that in anticipation of that possibly being your next question, Mr. Chairman. I think there are a couple of sort of categories of board operation, if you will, that I've actually been thinking about and had the privilege of working with several different chairmen of the boards, including Mr. Session, and their sort of organization. And on the one hand, I think there's a board staff that I think keeps us logistically running very well, and I don't really think that there's much room for improvement. We have a board book management system which keeps track of our documentation and dissemination of the documentation within the board. I think that works quite well from a logistics standpoint. I do think that we've, over the last several chairmen, have tried to work through different processes in terms of how often we meet in between board meetings, how we structure our committee structures, somewhat what the same thing that you go through on a biennial basis with organization of the council, rearranging who's on what committee and how that committee structure works and reports. We've had several different models from the different chairmen who've been in charge, and I think thinking through that and continuing to think through that in a thoughtful way to maximize efficiency, transparency to the public, people's board members' time, the ability to get through large amounts of documentation and information. So working through, I think, the committee structure and how board meetings will actually operate. We have a set of bylaws and organizing statutes that's similar to you, Mr. Hill, in terms of the constraints that you have on how you have to operate. But within those constraints, we have some degree of flexibility. So continuing to work to improve the efficiency of how our actual meetings and in between meetings work on the one side. And I think the third component is to continue the process that really Warner, I think, started during his chairmanship and bringing our board members together. We've now through the Mr. Session and his predecessor have had meetings outside of our regular meeting structure, retreats, where we've kind of tried to think through larger issues, get to know each other. There's been some degree of outreach pre-pandemic to trying to have some more social events among and between board members as a group. So I think continuing down those paths to have greater professional relationships and understanding, mainly across jurisdictions, understanding what the issues are in Virginia, for example, obviously not the same as those here in DC, those issues in Maryland. So I think continuing that fostering of relationships as well is something that I'd look forward to continuing going forward.
Thank you. Give me just a second. Mr. Hill, now that you've listened to Mr. Pozen, anything, I'm not trying to press anything else out of you, but any other thoughts you might have, if you have any?
I mean, this is where I suppose I don't know how the funding works. And I know that there's a lot of different things that are going on with funding. I mean, I would think that Sarah Barden over the Office of Zoning and or Max Tondro, who's at OAG, they would know about and I don't want to touch on this wherein I don't know exactly the need, but the ability to, again, get full orders out as quickly as possible. That's where it is just the nature of a full order. It just takes longer. And so I don't know how that could be changed. I mean, it's just the way the full order is written. It's just the way that, you have to provide all of the answers to any kind of opposition that we get from ANCs or the Office of Planning, and or other parties in opposition. So it's just the process. And so that's the only other thing that comes to mind.
Thank you. I do not have any more questions for either of you. So I want to again thank you for your service to date, as well as thank you for your willingness to continue serving. If there's anything else you want to add, as in supplement what you've said today, the record's open for 1 week. That goes for the public. That is anybody else. The record's open for 1 week. Closes next Monday at 5 p.m. That's going to conclude this hearing. Again, thank you to each of you and to Mr. Session. And we're going to adjourn. So the time is 11:37 in the morning and this hearing is adjourned.